Hey, welcome to the GoToPhysio podcast. We are on episode 69 or season 4, episode 19 of building a go-to clinic that gives you true freedom. And this episode is all about the 3 main growth levers in private practice for a sustainable go-to clinic. Now, the word sustainable is really important in what I'm going to cover in this episode, because if you want a sustainable go-to clinic that delivers for your family and what you need not only now, but also continues to grow and is going to deliver for what you need in the future, then what we're going to cover in today's episode is incredibly important. And at the time of recording this, we're in November, and in November in the Go-To Clinic Mastermind, we always have our budget intensive. So we do a 4-week budget, an extra additional coaching call for our members. And it's all about building our budget in December for 2025. And then in December, when we do our yearly planning day, we actually put together the strategic plan that's backed on the numbers. And the reason I'm mentioning that today is on the call last week, Paddy Mulligan, our head business coach in the mastermind, he said something very, very powerful actually, that I think a lot of our members got value out of. And I think it really is important, and it relates to today's episode. And he said, to paraphrase, Paddy said, when I first started out, and I can resonate with what Paddy said because that was me too, which is why it probably resonated so deeply with me. He said, when I first started out, and just a bit of back context to that is what we do in the budget is we actually put in a percentage of how much we want to grow this year, okay? And one clinic owner put 20%, okay? And that's all well and good if you're a solo clinic owner and you're building quite aggressively. But for a more mature clinic, 20% is quite aggressive, okay? Where you've got like 5 or 6 plus therapists and a lot of outgoings and etc. To grow 20% year on year, it's very aggressive. And again, for some people, the whole point of a mentor is to tell you what you need to hear versus what you want to hear. Okay? And so when we saw that 20% go into the chat, Paddy made this point. He said, look, that was me at the start where everything was about 20% growth, and it was almost like a crypto mindset where we can get these massive gains nice and quickly. But that goes back to that word sustainable. And he said, no, I've kind of changed my mindset more towards a Warren Buffett type, where it's the compounding impact of 5, 6, 7% growth year on year and year, okay? And if you want a sustainable go-to clinic that, for me, I think the word feels is important. It feels easy. Now, it's not going to be easy, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it is easy, because business isn't easy. But if it feels easy, okay, that to me is important in terms of we're not constantly up against the grind to hit the results. And we covered last week in the Intensive Accelerator the importance of setting your team up for success. Because very often what we do is when we want to grow, we put unrealistic expectations on the team and we create a budget that's not backed in numbers, essentially. And we've got Steve's Law in the Go-To Clinic Mastermind. And Steve's our finance guru that helps all the members with their budgets and stuff. And his rule is essentially you should only ever build a budget based on what you've done historically. Okay, because anything else essentially is just a wish. Now, I get that there's opportunities coming up. You may acquire clinics and all of that. And of course, we need to take that into consideration. But even with that, we want to do it based on what that clinic has done historically also. Okay, and then have a realistic expectation. Because if we just pluck a figure out of the year, that's the top number that comes into our mind, then very often what happens, and this is me speaking from experience here, by the way, is that we set our team up for failure, okay? Because we have a number that just pops into our mind on the strategic planning day, and we put it down. And then we go back and we tell our team, this is what we need to hit this year. And it's just a number, okay? And then what happens notoriously is it was unrealistic. Then the team are losing because we're not hitting that number. That then has second order consequences, which impacts the culture of the team. And who wants to be on a losing team? Look at Man United in the mess that they've got themselves up into now. That losing culture, it's very, very hard to get out of. And that's where the beauty of the budget, setting the budget properly, is we can see the numbers. And we can see very, very clearly where there is opportunities, but most importantly, it's realistic based on our historical performance. Now, for a 20% growth for a solo clinic owner, that's going to be a lot more realistic. But for a clinic that's got 5, 6, 7 therapists, 20% year on year, with just without any kind of external factors influencing it, that's going to be very, very aggressive, okay? And again, if that's what you want and you need and you're willing to do that for the year, that's absolutely fine. But to have 20% growth year on year on year with one clinic and not acquiring clinics or other strategies like that, that's not going to be very sustainable. So this is where the 3 growth levers become critical. And the 3 growth levers essentially, number one, we can maximize your customer's lifetime value. Number 2 is we can improve sales conversions. And number 3 is we can optimize the best performing marketing channels. So what we want to do is, and especially when we create our budgets for the year, is we want to see where the opportunities are. Because everybody goes straight to number 3 is, I need more and more new patients. Whereas in the GoTo Clinic Mastermind, we've got an ethical growth calculator in our GoTo Clinic Hub now, which can show you your metrics and quickly identify what's the most simple and direct path to grow to hit your target number. So if we look at again at our Clinic A and Clinic B, the 3 key metrics here, if we've got an IA rebook rate of 70%, and we've got a PVA, patient visit average of 3, and we've got a drop-off percentage of 15%, or we've got one of those metrics that are in the Clinic A, then that's a very, very significant opportunity for growth. Because if we switch that IA from 70 to 90, we get the PVA from 3 to 6, and we get the drop-off percentage from 15 to 8, then there's significant growth with the patients that we already have in the diary. So if we look at that example that we use for illustration purposes, for those 100 patients that come in 2025 at an average order value of just £50, which is low, okay, you've got 59 patients actually completing the treatment of care in Clinic A versus 83 in Clinic B. But here's the big thing, the difference in appointments, 280 appointments were generated from 100 patients in Clinic A versus 640 in Clinic B. So in terms of a clinic that can sustainably grow, Clinic A, if we're ploughing more and more money into marketing and we've chosen growth lever 3 to grow, it's not going to be sustainable because eventually we're going to run out of money. Okay, because there's only one way that Google ads are going, and that's up. There's only one way that Facebook ads costs are going, and that's up. Okay, so it's not sustainable. So that's where the 3 growth levers can be incredibly powerful. Okay, and if we can get ourselves into a Clinic B version, then the beauty of this is we can then go back and we can actually, when we go to growth lever 3, we can then afford to spend more money on our advertising and our marketing spend, and we can outspend our competition. So if you want to dominate your area, you want to literally beat your competition, then you have to look at the 3 growth levers. Because if you're just looking at growth lever number 3 and you've got real big gaps in levers 1 and 2, then it's going to be very, very hard to outspend your competition. It's going to be virtually impossible because for every 100 patients, almost half of them are only staying for a couple of sessions. Okay, whereas Clinic B, where and the growth of that business at a rate, or 2x, compared to Clinic A. Okay, and that's without any more additional new patients. So that's where really understanding your growth levers, your numbers, is so powerful for sustainable growth. And anyone can have a good year, and we can run a Facebook ad for free assessments and stuff like that. But you run your free assessment ads on Facebook, there's a lot of work has to go into that. And that's fine if you're choosing to do that, but you just have to understand that. Whereas the most simple and direct way for sustainable growth is to focus on growth levers number 1 and 2 first, maximize lifetime value of your existing patients, improve sales conversions for your growth lever number 2, and then focus on growth lever number 3. And I'm not for 1 second saying that you need to focus on growth lever number 3. A big part of our strategy next year is growth lever number 3. Okay, but we have the numbers dialed in that growth levers number 1 and 2 now. We've maximized those essentially. Okay, and the other thing that is really interesting is even having one of these key levers, like your drop-off percentage. So your IRA book might be really good, and your patient visit average might be good for 2 out of your 3 therapists. But having one therapist with these metrics not in place, it has a significant impact in the clinic. Okay, and that's where you can understand then, where do I need to be spending my time and energy? Okay, because the difference between therapist A versus therapist B here, if we want to do that instead of clinics, therapist A per 100 patients that they get, they're generating £14,000. Therapist B for 100 patients, they're generating £32,000. Okay, and when we look going into next year at price rises or salary increases and all of those things, this is significant. So understanding if you want sustainable growth, we have to respect the growth levers. So the first growth lever is going to be your maximizing your lifetime value. We've talked a lot about that in the previous episodes. How do we maximize our lifetime value? Well, we set expectations in the first session. We've got 6 stages of the patient journey. And very often, a lot of what's happening in your head physio numbers, which we've talked about in previous episodes, low patient visit averages, high cancel did not rebooks, a lot of that is very often what didn't happen in the initial assessment in stage 1. Okay, so fixing all of those things can have a significant impact then for sustainable growth. In terms of improving sales conversions, we had a little bit of an issue with growth lever number 2 last month. And again, we saw our numbers start to dip a little bit. We were like, right, there's something not right here. And again, the system, the mastermind system worked perfectly because we used the numbers as an alert in the business that there's an input that isn't happening in the business at the moment that's leading to the output, which is these numbers. So I got the alert in the business that something isn't quite right, and I could trace it back to answering the phone. Okay, so again, one of the first levers that you can pull in improving your sales conversion is just answer the phone. Okay, and there was a whole host of reasons, from admin being on holiday. One of the big things that we have now and that we've had to address, and it's great because it gave us an opportunity to address it, is when we've moved clinics, there's a different trigger because all of the therapists aren't right in front of reception now. There's some upstairs, there's some downstairs. There's new challenges for us. So we had to redo our customer journey as they came through the clinic to update some of our SOPs for that stuff. So that allowed me then to see actually there's a problem with growth lever number 2 here. Okay, and we could see that with our stats with phone calls and missed calls and calls going to voicemails, is that because the admin weren't on the front desk for whatever reason, okay, sickness, holidays and stuff like that, we started to notice that number dropped a little bit. Okay, so would be a simple example of that. Your sales conversions, the amount of phone calls you're getting versus the ability to book the patients in versus the ability to get them to turn up, then with your initial assessment to get them to actually rebook again, ideally go on to a package of care. Okay, and then the final one is obviously your marketing channels. Okay, and I think the most important thing to understand with your marketing channels is actually to understand where your best patients are coming from. Okay, because all patients aren't equal, and also all marketing channels aren't equal. And the last thing I'm going to say today in today's podcast is we as clinic owners have a limited time and energy every single week. Okay, and when I first started coaching therapists, not from the therapist mentorship, but from the clinic mentorship program, it was amazing to see the transformation after a few strategic plannings, because the first strategic planning day that we held, everybody massively overestimated what they could achieve in a quarter. They put down these massive goals, and what they quickly realized that we almost overestimate, okay, or it's probably going to take twice as long and usually twice as much time and money as you think something is going to take. Okay, and that's all well and good once we keep moving in the right direction. But the key point here with your marketing channels is the easiest thing is, well, next year I'm going to do this, this and this. The reality is the time and energy that it takes to get one marketing channel proper and convert them properly and know your numbers and understand that, it's significant. And that's why we can't just do this concept of I'm just going to do everything. Okay, you can do everything, but again, it goes back to the ability to outspend the competition, because it's not going to be sustainable long term if you're not getting a positive return on investment, especially if you don't have growth levers 1 and 2 right. So as you go into 2025, the first step is, do you know your numbers? Okay, do you know what your therapist's head physio numbers are? And if they're all in IA rebooks of 90%, your PVAs are 6+, or whatever it is, depending on your situation, your cancel did not rebooks is within 8%, brilliant. Okay, then let's start looking at other stuff. But if they're not within those metrics, then there's so much opportunity for growth in the business where you can actually double your profits. And we've got one clinic in the mastermind at the moment, and the budget for next year, they gone really well. All I've done with them is I've just focused on growth levers 1 and 2. We haven't even looked at number 3, and I've been working with them for 3 years. And they've gone from themselves and 1 therapist to now having 5 therapists plus the 2 clinic owners. Okay, and they've grown year on year massively. And the biggest thing that they need to do next year is keep their staff. Okay, because staff turnover, there was a couple of staff went to Australia and bits and pieces, so which hurt their ability to grow aggressively and stuff like that, just because they were maxed out. So it was actually a hiring problem that we've solved over the last 12 months. But the big thing with them is they now have the team in place to hit the budget. And what I challenged them to do was go, actually, I don't want you to hit this budget, build this budget with you involved this year. Build the budget without the 2 of you involved. And can you actually hit that? And they were amazed when they did that, is they can actually achieve the budget that they want next year without either of them treating a single patient. They've got the team now and the ability to do that. And their whole goal for next year is, if they keep their team in place and they just maintain their head physio metrics for growth lever number 1, they will hit their budget for next year. And then anything they see on top, it's going straight into their pension fund or their growth fund for other plans that they have. And that's the value of understanding the growth levers and understanding the metrics. So that clinic's level of clarity that they have, it's very, very simple. We just need to do 3 big things next year. We need to keep our team focused, and we need to keep the culture good, and we need the team to feel like they can deliver the best standards. We need to keep within the head physio standards. Okay, and then number 3 is we just need to support our team to the best of our ability to hit those standards. That's it. So for that clinic going into next year, they're crystal clear on what they need to do. And that's sustainable, and it feels easy for them. Okay, and I've got no doubt they're going to continue to expand next year, and they're probably going to need to hire again. Okay, but that's the value of understanding the growth levers. And they were Clinic A essentially, and they got to Clinic B. And their impact of that is, it's not just, if you go back, it's not just the fact that you get the extra 360 appointments. And a lot of people miss this. This is per that 100 patients that came through the door. The reality is, the big difference here is you've had 59 patients in Clinic A, or therapist A, that was discharged. You've got 83 patients that were discharged from Clinic B out of 100. And when they're discharged, that usually means they get the result. So the referability of that clinic, it's an extra, God knows how many sessions that is, when you look at the next person that comes in and they have 6 sessions that the person out of the 83 referred. We're straight away there. We've lost 24 potential referrals for Clinic A. You multiply those, if we assume that they potentially give us 1 each, that's an extra 24 multiplied by 6, and then you get into silly numbers. And that's the compounding stuff that Paddy was talking about. So, and that's essentially what's happened with this clinic going into next year. And this is the compounding effect of growth lever number 1, is if you can maximize the lifetime value, it's not just about the current 100 patients, it's about the legacy of the clinic. And those 100 patients, out of the 100, the 83, they're much, much more likely to come back again as well, because they've got the result. Okay? So it's really important to understand this if you want sustainability. And sustainable growth, for me, is something that it feels easy and it's less reactive. Whereas if you put a marketing campaign out, and anyone that's done that, you'll appreciate how much energy is involved in that. And one of the biggest mistakes I've made is not communicating to my team enough, that I've spent so much time getting the marketing campaigns out that I almost forgot to tell my team. And then people are ringing the phone. My team aren't really clued in. And then it's a problem with growth lever number 2, where we're not improving the sales conversions. Okay, so there's a lot of work that has to go into all of these things. And I think that's the big takeaway with this today, is understanding and appreciating just how much time and effort each of these growth levers takes. So understanding where the greatest opportunities are and focusing on those first, you then get the compounding effect. Because ultimately, if you focus on growth lever number 3, marketing, first, it's going to be very, very difficult to outspend the competition if your maximizing lifetime value is low, if you're clinic A. Okay, and if your sales conversions are really poor and you're spending all your time and energy on growth lever number 3, it's going to be very hard to outspend the competition. And I just want to wrap up today, and I want to say I am not for 1 second saying you don't need new patients. Okay, of course we all need new patients. And as I said, we're focusing on growth lever number 3 this year. Okay, it's going to be one of the big things for us this year. But we're very tight with our numbers now. We're very happy with our numbers. That's happening in growth lever number 1. We had a little blip moving the clinic down for growth lever number 2, but the alerts in the dashboard alerted us that we needed to fix those problems. And already 2 weeks later, we're seeing the numbers go back up again because the inputs are happening now, which leads to the outputs. Okay, and then we can go back now and we can focus on growth lever number 3. So growth lever number 3 is very, very important. But what I am saying is that if you want sustainable growth, you have to have growth levers number 1 and number 2 right. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very hard to outspend the competition. Okay, if you want more assistance with that, that stuff's our bread and butter. Okay, it's what we do, what we've done in the therapist mentorship initially, and then what we've done then recently is we've helped clinic owners to turn into great head physios, where they can then support their therapists alongside our access to our mentorship and the GoToClinic hub. And that's why I've built the hub, is for my own clinic, is to take care of growth lever number 1, because it's the most important thing for sustainable growth. And the GoToClinic hub has all the tools that you need for your clinicians to hit growth lever number 1. And now everyone in the GoToClinic mastermind, their staff have access to the GoToClinic hub as well, which means it's very, very easy then, and it does a lot of the heavy lifting to have self-managing go-to therapists. Okay, so if you want some support with that, just reach out, fill in an application. More than happy to have a chat with you, depending on what you're looking to achieve. For a good fit, obviously we'll let you know, and if we're not, then we'll let you know as well. Because if you're a clinic owner and you just want to come and just focus on growth lever number 3, and you've got massive issues with growth lever number 1 and number 2, we are not the program for you. Okay. Growth lever number 3, when we get that right, then things start to take off very, very quickly. But if you don't have 1 and 2 right, spending all that time on marketing, it's not sustainable. And that's what we're about in the GoToClinic Mastermind, is building businesses, building GoToClinics that's sustainable for the clinic owner, that delivers your definition of success on a daily basis. Okay? So if you want more information, just reach out. That's all for this week. Okay? Your action items for this week: go and have a look at your growth levers. Which growth levers are you going to focus on next year? Number 1, number 2, and number 3. Okay, and again, just keep in mind you have a limited time and energy available to you, and it's very, very hard to focus on all 3 at the one time and do a good job. Okay, so that's it for this week. Thanks for listening as always. I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's show. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, if you'd like a free copy of my Head Physio Systems 6-step checklist that I use to personally audit my own therapists to make sure that they can keep patients progressing even when the pain is eased, so that we can ethically increase our patient numbers, our revenues and referrals, head over to www.thegotophysio.com/checklist and I'll get that sent straight over to you. That's it for this week. I'll see you in next week's show.